It is very strange that the senators and representatives in USA invariably votes almost in unanimity each year such a large sum of money to Israel. It is suspected that the senators and representatives must be receiving substantial monetary incentives to do so. Majority of American citizens says that $160 billion belong to the American people, not to Jews. Americans must not allow the Jews to steal from them any longer. Give $1 million to every human in the planet instead, and we will live peacefully. It is well known that Israel is dependent on U.S. veto power protection in the UN Security Council. If the U.S. backs out, Israel may seek new political and military alliances with countries like China or Russia in exchange for such support, much to the detriment of U.S. political interests. Israel has been the largest cumulative recipient of U.S. foreign aid since its founding, receiving about $300 billion, adjusted for inflation, in total economic and military assistance. Peter McPherson, a former administrator of the Agency for International Development, estimated that every $1 billion of aid to Israel creates 60,000 to 70,000 jobs in the United States. In 2010, U.S. subsidiaries of Israeli-owned firms employed 23,600 U.S. workers, with compensation for those employees totaling $1.8 billion, and U.S. affiliates of Israeli-owned firms also contributed $256 million to U.S. exports. Compared to the $3.0 billion yearly military aid to Israel, the U.S. contributes more than $130 billion every year to the defense of Europe and more than $30 billion to the defense of Japan, Korea, and the Far East. Chinese company is building a new harbor in Haifa, and a Chinese company will operate this harbor for 25 years. The U.S. is pressuring Israel to rescind the contract with the Chinese. Israel receives $3+ billion annually from the states, which can, by law, only be spent on American-produced military equipment and nothing else. So, America gives Israel money which has to be spent back in the states for equipment which is then overpriced. U.S. foreign aid falls into two classifications: development assistance and security assistance. Security assistance consists of money, training, and has an associated privilege of equipment purchase and technology transfer. In America, very powerful pro-Israel lobbies, like AIPAC, that get politicians to do it. Israel is a very tiny nation with a relatively small population. It receives a disproportionate amount of aid compared to other bigger and more populous nations. Israel is the only country that has gained battlefield experience with U.S. weapons. The U.S. also is beneficiary of Israel's military development. This experience is immediately conveyed to the U.S. Israel, in the light of its experience, continually modifies U.S. weapons systems. People Different Walk of Life of America says that Israel committed crimes against humanity, killing children, women, elderly people, doctors, nurses, first responders, journalists, including our senators and congressmen. Wake up from their sleep, open their eyes, and watch what Netanyahu government and IDF soldiers doing. Stop support to this war crimes government. If the USA was to wholly turn its back on Israel, the consequences for Israel would be dramatic. Israel has survived in the past without USA support, but reverting back to that scenario would be very difficult for it. Luckily for Israel, it's highly unlikely that this will happen in the foreseeable future. Aside from the warm relations between the two countries, their governments, and their people, these relations are simply very beneficial for both parties. The Jewish community in America is very large, who have penetrated the American system at every level. They are there more at decision-making level in the administration, which becomes very difficult for America to segregate them as such. Israel, which is a state born soon after the WW2 in 1948, with much persecution of the Jews by Hitler's Nazi and Mussolini, has gained much sympathy from Western world community. As such, it becomes very difficult for USA not to help Israel financially, as it is a vibrant democracy in that part of the world. Israel tries to survive in a very hostile geographical environment that resulted in several wars, started by more than one country at a time. Israel cannot afford to lose any war, as this will be the end of the only Jewish state. Israel must learn from history. Before 1967, Israel was very dependent on French military equipment, from fighter planes to missile boats. In 1967, France, in a snap decision, suddenly decided to no longer supply even equipment that Israel had already ordered and paid for. Diversification of supply is only logical.